Well, welcome to Slaughterhouse Supermarket. Yes, and I want to remind everyone that this is Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, and this transmission is only for entertainment's sake. There is no real value in any of the beliefs, or there are no beliefs. We're here just to have a good old time with all our relations. See it clearly. Anybody there? Can you hear my voice? Are we doing good? Earlier today, let's see. Yeah, working hard. Earlier in the morning, my first jaunt out, I got knocked off line within the first 30 minutes, and I kept talking for another hour and a half before I realized that. So I'm now trying to be more aware, And then I came on around 2-ish and basically filled in that part of the story that I hadn't been able to put down in the morning. And that was my going to Brazil and building a nightclub in a town called Buzios, and being shown the Nazi representation, The Boys in Brazil, right? That movie. And so I, ended up in this town, and it was a town that was put there by the Nazis to be a place where people could come and become a transhuman and basically trade in their identity for another identity on every level: their face, their fingerprints, their genetic structure, and to the point of being somewhat eternal. And it was also a place where the rich and powerful of every ilk of the fascist state could come and have do whatever they wanted without any cost, meaning it was a gated community, like on the level of a concentration camp, but the concentration camp members were on the outside of the wall. The protected elites were on the inside. And they could do anything they wanted. And the citizens, or the public, or the what were viewed as the expendables, could be used in any way. It was almost, like that movie Westworld, right? Where the robots could be destroyed, killed, and maimed by the rich elite. And they had you could live out their fantasies. They had no one came after them. But it was a place where the Nazis could hide in plain sight and basically, what's the right word? Turn the corporate structure, the political structure, the elite structure of the Western democracies to their use, right? Turn them into a cutout, and I was right in the midst of it, building a nightclub for this woman who was the Jabba the Hutt of this community. And I did it. I built the club, and I got myself in that community, and it was quite interesting. So I urge you to go and see this afternoon's run. And because it goes in great detail of everything, and I'm not going to spend hours to repeat that detail, I just want to give you a little thumbs up of what it was. And so in the middle of this town was another very gated community. It was called the Hospital, and this is where the Nazis were. And the Nazis were all over Brazil, not just in Buzios. They were all over. And I was exposed to many of them that were in Sao Paulo and, you know, the capital city there. And Buzios is 200 miles north of that capital city. It's not Sao Paulo, it's the other one. Anyway, let's see, working hard. Let's see what you guys are saying. Oh man, it sucks. Guys. Well, he was my friend, and no, he didn't die. They didn't murder him. He was there as the gigolo, and whatever money I gave my friend, I knew I'd never see it again, so it was like a present, so it was no big deal. Well, this is true, but all history. What is his story? When asked, Thucydides, the father of written history, within side of the Western Roman Empire, they said, "So Thucydides, what's history?" And he said, "Whatever the Romans pay me to write." My experience as a scholar in universities is that tenured professors are basically prostitutes, whores. They'll do whatever, just to get that sense of security. And there is no security within the construct of the economic system we have. I mean, our money is worthless. It's like, just paper, and soon as it stops being the oil reserve currency, we're going to be like Germany was, And, Donald Trump is Adolf Hitler, within the construct of he's just a clown, he's just a puppet. But so was Obama, so was George W., so was Billy Bob, so was George H., so was Ronald Reagan. But Ronald Reagan, to the point of he believed his script, and that's why they shot him. And luckily for Ronald, that the guy who was driving the presidential limousine had been a DC policeman, and he just started on the job, and everyone thought he would choke or freak out or not follow. And instead of going out to Walter Reed, which Donnie would have been dead by then, he went to the closest hospital within blocks of where the gunshot was, and that was good at dealing with gunshots. And DC had a number of hospitals that did that. And he was a policeman, so he knew exactly where to go. Took him, he took the authority to radio. He had the mic right there, and he called up that hospital and said, "Hey, I'm bringing the president, get ready." And that's why Donnie survived. But anyway, back in Buzios, I had gone to a dinner party where what the gentleman who ruled Buzios, everyone thought Madame was, but she was just the Jabba the Hutt. The Nazis were the people who made Buzios, who kept it going, who did everything about it. Anyway, his name was the Master, and he ran the hospital. He wasn't a doctor per se. I mean, he didn't do surgery and such. He just was the Master. And his discipline was more genetic engineering. And he had worked for Mengele. And, the camps were originally started as work camps for people who didn't agree with Adolf, not necessarily um, you know, um, the Jews. When Adolf was brought on, he came in, he only got 30 something percent. He was made chancellor, but he didn't run the government. And it wasn't until they burned down the Reichstag, and that was their 9/11, and they passed I forgot the name of it, but it was just like the Patriot Act. It had a German name that sounded similar. Did the same thing, almost word for word. They were given total power so the people could feel safe. And basically, they put everyone in Germany under the gun. And if you didn't go along, this one Protestant bishop said, when they went after the gypsies, I didn't know any gypsies, so I didn't care. When they went after the homosexuals, I didn't know any homosexuals, so I didn't care. When they went after the unionists and the communists, I didn't know any, so I didn't care. When they went after the Jews, I didn't know any, so I didn't care. And when they came after me, there was no one to care about me. And as Franklin said, we either hang together or we hang separately. And that's kind of where we are now. And my exposure to what was coming and is upon us now. I had already seen many things. I had already been part of the UN. I had already worked in Los Alamos and San Diego and gone to many lectures and heard about all of the the alternative three, that the fact that the Nazis had won. Germany had been bombed into the Stone Age, but the Nazis, Hail Hydra, had taken over the U.S. government through Operation Paperclip and taken over pretty much, NATO and everything else. And so I understood this, but it didn't become completely relevant until I met these guys in Buzios, Brazil. And again, I would suggest you go listen to my afternoon chat, and it gives it in great detail, and I won't go further. And to say, the master, I went to a dinner party with master, and he basically, there's loads of people there, the Illuminati, the power elite, you think Bohemian Grove or any of those other clubs. No, this place was like, and it was right hidden in plain sight. And so I had built this nightclub, and it was running extraordinarily well, and everyone came and had a good time, and it was shamanically charged by Nazi symbology and Sitchins, so the people would have a glorious time. And so was Studio 54, and so was a number of other places, not just Bohemian Grove. So I Yep, beloved. So that evening at the hospital, I met everyone, met all the powers elite, and the master who ruled was one of Lucifer's inside henchmen. And he brought me in just to show me the opulence and splendor of Lucifer's wealth. And if I joined up, I could be one of these insiders. And then, after meeting everyone, we went into the snooker room, the game room in the castle. And it was just him and I, and we talked. And basically, again, if you go to this afternoon's show, you'll see, I will tell, exactly what was said, but I won't go in as much detail. All I will say right now is that we agreed to be friends. And what are friends? Someone who has respect for the other person, because they know the other person can't hurt them, and they do not fear them. What's the other thing of a friend? A friend is who does something for their friend, not expecting a quid quo pro, but because they want to make them happy. And by making them happy, I'm made happy. And thirdly, what makes a friend is someone who you can trust your back to, right? So, this character, the master, he, we talked and we agreed to agree on being friends and having those three things as the foundation of our relationship. And then he said, the other thing I want you to do. And I said, and what is that? And I said, I can't serve you or your master, Lucifer, because I serve love's co-creation. I'm just here because I have a sense that by doing so, something good can come out of this. And I've been taught through all of my teachers that you should not get involved unless you can get a positive outcome for all your relations, not just you. It's not transactional. And you don't do it to be the hero to save the day. You do it to bring forward love's co-creation for all our relations. See it clearly. And to understand that clearer, I would suggest you go read my writings at xratted.blogspot.com. And I have one of my 26 novels, and I only have 3/4 of it there. But within those 6 cuts, each can be read separately or all together or in any order. That's the beauty and art of my writing. You will get a real perspective of all the shamanic things that I'm speaking of. And the way to read this is read whatever cut you choose and read it. And each one is about 30 or 40 pages long. Really, you can read that relatively easily in one sitting or two. But read it quickly. Just read. Don't let anything stop you or what does this mean? Just read right through it. And if for some reason a paragraph or such you can't figure out, just keep going. And then you go back and you read it again, right? Slower this time, right? And then the third time, if you print it out, you can do this. You can make notes, right? And underline things and write things on the side about what you think or question about it. And then you can, get a hold of me at the dude awake 42 at Gmail. The dude awake 42 at Gmail. And you can write to me about what questions or what you think about my writings, right? And anything else, right? If you have any kind of questions, about anything, you can, again, get a hold of me at the dude awake 42 at Gmail. And if you live in America and you want to talk to me, leave me your phone number and I'll get right back to you. So we pick up at the end of that party where the master and I have agreed to be friends, and that the master is going to let his henchmen, about 20 or so Nazis that were with him and Dr. Mengele at the camps doing all of the transhumanism research, right? And they were following the Jewish cabal and trying to build golems as super soldiers. And I will go further into that later in this chat. And I met the staff of this hospital. Not all of them were, Nazis. Most of them were folks, Brazilians. And the head surgeon there was definitely not a Nazi. But he kind of understood what was going on, but didn't want to know. And he kind of just, he liked his lifestyle there. He liked his, status there. He liked his paycheck and that he was, getting it in gold and putting it away. And, he thought, fine, as long as he didn't do any Nazi stuff, he was all good with Jesus. Even though he worked for the master and worked in this place that did some pretty nasty stuff, they just didn't change the faces and fingerprints of criminals. They created Camaras. They created clones. They created all kinds of genetic monsters. And they had been doing it since the 30s. They had gone to the moon in the 30s and had gone to Mars in the 40s and had colonized space. And they did that in the 40s, 50s, and 60s with the assistance of the U.S. government, the Canadian government, the English government, NATO, the European governments, and Russia and China on varying levels. But they were all in it, and they were all part of the hidden hand, which is a, transnational, oligarchic, fascist cabal. And that's who picks our presidents, who declares what our money's worth, who starts wars, who poisons populations, and has nothing to do with the population, because the population is, useless eater expendables. Even though we are, have our own consciousness that was, created by love's co-creation, and we have this thing called a free will. And most of the Nazi cabal does not have a free will. And there are millions of dimensional creatures, extraterrestrial creatures, and demonic creatures, all in this universe, all controlled by Lucifer, and all an illusion. They don't exist. They are in this material illusion, this bubble. And all the wars and all the catastrophes and all the species obliterations are there to keep the bubble from popping. Because if the bubble pops, we all go home. All our relations go back to love's co-creation. Everything that has a free will has the choice to be with love's co-creation. And those who do not have a free will get the ability to grow one. And that is what I'm going to be talking about tonight. So, at that party, I met the staff of the hospital and the director of the hospital, the head surgeon, and he had two daughters, and one was a surgeon like him and a scientist like him, and she was a person who wanted to know things, like me. And she was a serious scientist, and everything was science, right? And she grew up in this, she grew up in Sao Paulo, but she came to be a doctor at this hospital when she was in her late, teens. And she didn't go to a medical school. She studied right there under the Nazis and under her father and other surgeons. And she became a very good surgeon. And she got the paperwork showing that she went to this school and that school and had licenses to be a surgeon and a doctor. So, she had the ability to go somewhere else. She had the documentation and the skills, and really a higher skill set than most doctors anywhere in the world. So, because she understood certain things that most doctors had no idea about. So, we met at that party, and we had a very nice conversation on the veranda of the castle. And the next day we met for lunch, and then she hadn't seen the nightclub, and it was nearly finished. Our opening was in about 2 weeks. And so I took her over there and showed her out, and she really was impressed because she had a shamanic side to her just like the fisherman's family that I was at. Um, One of the daughters had the knack. She said she had a knack for languages, which she did. She knew German, Portuguese, French, Spanish, and English. And she worked at the bank there that was owned by the master and the lawyer, and Madame. And that was the power structure there. And the elites ran everything, and the people of Buzios were slaves, beyond slaves. They were property, beyond property. These people had, nothing. They would just work to death, and if they went along and got along and didn't make any waves, they had a relatively comfortable life. Food to eat, house that had, a part of the town that they could, go to a bar and dance and, find a spouse and have kids. That was it. And that's kind of where we are now. Huh? That's where everyone on this earth is. We are incarcerated. And before I left the master, he asked me as a friend to do him a favor. And I said, as I said, I told him that I couldn't do anything that served him or his master, Lucifer. And he goes, no, you don't understand. What I'm really interested, because this guy he was like Dorian Gray. He was like 400 or 500 years old. And he looked like he was 40. And all the Nazis looked like they were 40. And on the walls going up the staircase of the castle, there were paintings of each one of the Nazis. And they looked exactly like they looked today. So it was like a Dorian Gray, Sitchin, a spell. And anyway, he said he wanted me, he said that what he really liked about me or was impressed by me was the fact that I was a character that was the unexpected consequence. That within the shamanic toolbox that he and their ilk had, there was no way to figure out what I was going to do. Everyone else had a pattern they could follow, they could manipulate. They were a mud puppet. They had strings. I, for some reason, didn't have that, right? And yes, I am habitual in a lot of things. I have patterns about me that if people study, they could, well, he does this all the time. And anyway, he said that he wanted to show me things so I could take that knowledge and do something that would be non-habitual and that the powers that be could not pattern or isolate. And I said, well, that sounds good to me. And then I met my soon-to-be girlfriend, the doctor, daughter, who was the surgeon. And anyway, so she looked at, I showed her the nightclub and how everything was being run. And she goes, your presence is everywhere in this place, but you don't manipulate it. You don't run it. You found people who were passionate about what they do, and they kind of, came to a collective understanding of how it should be, and they run it, and you don't run them. And it's so efficient, and it works. And he goes to the hospital. It's all this backbiting and all these power struggles and all. And he said, there's none of that here. It's unbelievable. And I said, anything can be run like this nightclub. This is just my little, lab, my little experiment in social dynamics. And if you let people be who and what they are and what they love to do, that's when you get a pretty amazing outcome. Anyway, so that's why she liked me. And the other thing she liked, she goes, I've been watching you for a good month, and you don't run after girls. You haven't had, any sex, as far as I can tell, with anybody, and you're not gay. You're like, you're doing your thing to the best you can, and that makes you happy. And you like to learn about people and things and how things work, and then that's how you work within those things. And she goes, I've never seen anyone work with a madame like you did, I've never seen anyone work with a lawyer like you do. They're both nicer people. Thus, the town works better because they're not so mean to everyone, and because everyone in that town who was an expendable, and that's what they call them. You know, the police chief could walk in and blow their brains out. Any one of the security forces could rape and kill people without any kind of, you know, payback or have to go to jail or. And the rich people, they came there because they could do the same. But if the population didn't complain and went along, they had a relatively comfortable life, especially compared to the other, you know, peons that lived in favelas in the big cities. So everyone was oppressed. Everyone was incarcerated right in plain sight. And that's kind of where we are right now. So, you know, life was good for me. The nightclub was named Rick's after Casablanca. That was the aesthetic. And I basically let everyone call me Rick. Senior Rick, Dr. Rick, Rick, so that was, once the club opened, that's kind of what everyone knew me as. So we had a great managerial staff, and then we hired a great staff of people. And I made sure that, because I lived in the fishing village, and there were about, 60 families, family lines. And there were another 20 family lines in town that were like the, hospitality folk. And there was another 20 or 40 family lines that were the farmer folks. And I made sure that we hired people from every clan, right? And we brought them in. We put out a big call, and I made sure that the call was understood that I wanted to see members from every clan, every family of the peninsula. And they all showed up, about 300 people showed up, and we were looking for 50 people. And so we basically found the 50 people who loved to do the jobs that they were going to do, loved to wait, loved to bartend, loved to, that had experience in the other restaurants, bars, nightclubs, and then the more, fishing village things, and people who were musicians, who were kitchen people, who were bookkeepers, who were maintenance folk. We hired about 50. And we hired another 50 to be like backups, right? And so we basically gave a base pay of everyone got $20 a week. Now, the average salary of every one of these expendable people was about $2 a week. So it was 10 times their average salary, right? Then the folks who worked, and would be there on an hourly basis, we paid them $5 an hour. And so Madame, who is like really the owner and the head of this business arrangement of she, when she, she never really took part in anything. I always brought her the information and said, these are the ideas I have. This is how I'm thinking of doing it. What's your input? How do you do it? What's yay or nay? Because she was the boss. I let her really feel that. But I shamanically and because we became friends and she kept calling me her grandson, I let that happen so she could just let me do my thing to let everyone else do their thing. But she basically called me on the carpet when she heard that we were going to pay everyone $5 an hour. And I said, listen, this place is going to have somewhere between 700 and 1,200 people there a night, the richest people in the world. And our price structure isn't for the poor, it's for the uber rich. To get a bottle of wine is going to be $50. The worst, I mean, our wine list was great, but the cheapest one was $50. The most expensive one was $700. You know, Cocktails were, you know, $12 a piece, and basically nobody handed over cash. What happened was, to come to this club, you kind of had to be the elite. So it was a true club. You had to, even if you were only going to spend a night or two, you became a member. And becoming a member, you had to put X amount of dollars in the piggy bank. And if you spent it or didn't spend it within a month, it went to the business, right? And so everyone had at least $1,000 every night they went into this club to spend, and they would. And if they didn't, we took it, you know. So we had, somewhere between 200 and 1,000 people come to this club every night, and everyone was spending $1,000 a night. And you're going to complain about $5 an hour to 50 people? And that was, when the club ran, there was only 30 people working it. And I said, we want the service to be beyond belief. Now, the population here, if we give them a job and they're really good at what we're going to hire them for, we pay them $5 an hour, man, they will do anything to keep that job. And she said, okay, that makes sense. We'll try it out. And it worked. And not only did it work, there was always a kind of anxiety in that town of the people who lived there. But once all of this started bubbling through everything, everyone had money. So every business did even better. And the people didn't feel stressed. And so the leadership didn't get stressed. No one complained. No one, threw a bottle or got so frustrated that they did something that, they got shot in the head for. And so that's how that worked. And basically, everyone did their job so well. All I had to do was show up and be Rick. And I had these nice linen clothes, and I would go around and, you know, get drinks for people and just be smiling. And I really didn't do anything. Everyone, Michael ran the band and the music, and everyone did their job because they loved doing it. And I gave them the total authority to do it because Madame gave me the authority to run the place. So I really, you know, most nights I would there would be a few people who wanted to talk about something or other. Then we'd go upstairs to my office and we'd have a cigar or a spliff or a cachaza, or maybe play chess or billiards or something while we talked. And there'd be a group, and it was just a place where those kind of people, the elite, could feel really even more like inside. Wow. And I really didn't do much except have a great frigging life. And I had a great frigging girlfriend. And the guy who was not like the god of this peninsula was my friend. And the woman who was like the boss was like my grandma. And the police chief he always called me my good friend. And the lawyer guy who ran everything, I was the only guy he could trust. So, I was in the catbird seat. So, I spent more time up at the castle with the master because he had an amazing, amazing, amazing library and of things that most people have no idea about. History that no people like. Gang, I would love it if you go do a little homework on the old YouTube or the old, Google and look up the mud flood and who's the first black African president? Mandela, the Mandela effect, mud flood, Mandela effect, right? And you will find that all through our recent history, last 1,000 years or so, there have been calamities that have wiped out a good portion of the human race and put a big hurt on the the infrastructure, and it's not in our history books. The fire in Chicago, that's kind of blurring into, people don't even know that it happened. It wasn't Mrs. McGillicuddy's cow that kicked over a land, burned the city down. No, a asteroid came streaking into our atmosphere and detonated like a hydrogen bomb, air blast. And it took out Chicago, not just Chicago, other chunks fell off and did like a Hiroshima like bomb in other states. It killed close to 12 million people and decimated Chicago. And, Chicago at the time wasn't a wood city, it was concrete and steel. And, go look that one up. Another thing, we had a coronal mass ejection, an X flare hit squarely on the Earth. And at that time, the only electrical kind of devices we had were the telegraph and a few telephones and railroads. And they weren't electrical, but they were like these iron rails going across America. Well, that thing hit it, and it fried every telegraph line on the planet. And it took all the railroad tracks, especially out west, that they just put, east to west. They got bent up by the fluxes of that current of that flare, like spaghetti. And you don't really hear much about that. Now, if you do a little homework, you can find that it did happen, but you have to go look up this guy named Charles Fordor, and he was a reporter. He was a science reporter for the Herald Tribune, which was a great newspaper, and he kept coming across things like this and then trying to run stories about them. And the Herald Tribune was a internet. They had the one in London and Moscow and Paris, and the only remnants of the Herald Tribune are the ones in Europe. They took the Herald Tribune out. I mean, I was a kid when the Herald Tribune was still here. It kind of got taken out in the 70s. I mean, every city I lived in had 5 or 6 newspapers. New York City, different neighborhoods. I lived in, down by West Broadway near Manhattan Bridge, and that was a very Jewish neighborhood. But they were like Reform Jews and modern Jews, right? And so they were, they weren't like Hasidim or Lubavitch or Orthodox. So they were very political, very social, very unions, very, socialist, very, between 1890 and 1950, we had more than 2 parties. We had the Socialist Party, we had the Unionist Party, we had the Communist Party, we had the Democrats, and we had the Republicans. Then we had a myriad of other parties. And the United States was run between the Civil War and 1950 more as like, an English or European democracy. It wasn't just 2 parties. And now you guys have not a clue about any of the stuff, and it happened in my lifetime. And it's not in the history books. I mean, this is, the Mandela effect. That's kind of what it is. It's straight out of Orwell's 1984, where Winston's sitting at his typewriter and he's been, popping out propaganda as news for the last, 20 years of his career. And his country had been at war with this other country for 100 years. And this other country was our ally for 100 years. And then overnight, it switches, where our ally is now the enemy, our enemy is now our ally. And he has to rewrite all the history for the next so many years from the past. So people will think that we were always at war with who was our ally just the other day. And that's, Orwell basically represented the elite. His parents were the elites, and he wasn't saying, hey, watch out for this. He was giving a kind of programming to the general public who read this so they would feel comfortable when this happened. So this is happening to us right now. And we're at this window of opportunity I keep talking about, where the window is open, and one or two things can happen. We can have another mud flood, or we can change it like a snap. The bubble will pop, and all our relations will be able to rise to co-create with love. And we can go back home instead of be living in this, you know, misery of being incarcerated. See it clearly. So, I was there, I was, and again, I could still be there. I had this really sweet girlfriend. We were having a great time. There was no place I could go that I could buy. I mean, I'd go in any restaurant, any store, my money wasn't good because virtually everyone in that peninsula, all 7 or 8,000 or 12,000 people who were there, who weren't part of the elite, but were incarcerated there, who were the expendables. I increased their income by 1,000%. I made their life better. I mean, the whole time I was there, no one got shot in the head by the police chief being pissed off or any of his ilk. And they kind of put a damper on the elites going after the natives. Now, there was a whole class of genetically modified creatures that was in a part of the peninsula where the rich could go and do whatever the heck they wanted to them. That was fine, but not the expendables. So, I was Senor Rick. I was Dr. Rick. I was the dude, and I had a really sweet, brilliant, cuddly girlfriend. And anyway, so time went on, and I would go up and at least half of my week was spent hanging out up at the castle with the master and, just reading his library. And he would always invite me to take part with the genetically modified creatures, the chimeras. He took me up to that section of the peninsula that you couldn't, unless you had a pass, you couldn't get through. And it was like something out of a sci-fi movie. And this is 1988. And he said that they had been doing this since the 30s. They advertised that Chinese doctor who made a genetically engineered baby. They've been doing it since the 30s, Yes, I'm just a teddy bear. Well, we all have very strong psychic abilities. We were born with them, but they are dampened down, right? And we, have a free will. And I keep saying, go into state, meditate. And I've been doing that for almost 50 years. I've had, many, 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 uncountable number of amazing teachers, right? Shaman and spiritual and masters, spiritual masters. And the master, the Nazi master, he in essence was a spiritual master, and so was there was this other very strange character, but he was a reptile, 100% reptile. And he would, he was a shape-shifting Nazi reptile. And there are so many creatures, and they're not in the bloodlines like David Icke. I mean, we all have a reptilian brainstem in our brains, right? So we all have the characteristic to be a reptile, but we're also mammals, so we have that empathetic part of us, we have a, pineal gland and the other two, third eye glands that are psychic glands. And with meditation, breathing that 20% in, that 30% out, basically, you practice that, you got it. So yes, I have a pretty strong, I got a nice shield. I got a good 360. I can cold read people like a book, especially people, you know, that I don't know. I can get emotionally involved a tad with people I do know, so it kind of throws that off. And the other thing I am is somewhat habitual. You know, I was driving down the road one day and I had to go to a meeting and I was thinking about the meeting, so I wasn't thinking about my driving or anything else. And I kind of got a, thing, keep going straight, which I did. But because I was so habitual, I turned around and went down that road and got a speeding ticket. Meaning my psychic self said, there's a guy, police over there, keep going. But I was habitual and unconscious. We're living in this illusion world. I'm not Buddha, I'm not awake 100% of the time. I'm awake maybe 80% of the time. And that's pretty good. Most mud puppets are awake 0% of the time. Most ugly bags of water are awake maybe 2 to 4% of the time. So, yeah, I got some juice in me. Yeah. And I've died 6 times. You die that many times and see the other side. You gotta heads up on what it is. So let's see. It's not even an hour. So I'll quickly take the story to a certain point, and then we're gonna go in state. And ooh, that's gonna be fun. Where I'm gonna take you tonight. So they're having a great time. I'm the dude. I don't own the nightclub, but I'm the the poster boy of it, right? Senor Rick, and that's not even my name. That's what everyone called me. I mean, some people knew me as Al because they knew me the first weeks I got there, before I even had the idea of it being, Casablanca. So anyway, so I was having a great time, and I was spending time with the master. And the master, when you have a person like that treating you like you're special, that's pretty good for your ego. Again, I got an ego. I just don't have. I try to have a egoless ego. I don't wear my ego on my sleeve. Everything around me is not about me. It's my interaction, my conscious interaction with everybody. That's what it's about. And what I can do, again, what Love's Co-Creation always tells me, you need to always be in service to the good of Love's Co-Creation. Not the hero, not the this, don't believe anything, no dogma, da-da-da-da-da. So that's how I roll. So I'm doing all that and having a pretty good time. And really kind of because the master, he and I are communicating more and more telepathically. And that's a real trip. And everyone can do it. If you don't let yourself get distracted, you can do it. You can be, you know, being a adept is like you're on the path to being a Jedi Knight. That is, the shock troops of Love's Co-Creation is a Jedi Knight. These aren't the droids you're looking for. Sometimes I can do it. Sometimes not. It didn't get me out of getting that speeding ticket. And then I have to deal with the court and the this and the pay that, it's any way I slice it, it's going to cost me about $300 that I don't really have. But by doing it, I've met a whole bunch of people I would have never met if I didn't have this. So the larger picture is getting that speeding ticket got me to meet other people that I wouldn't have met, and it's a better thing that I met them than if I didn't meet them. So I see, always look for the silver lining of the cloud. Subconscious knows all. Let's see. Yep. Things. Yep. In everyday life, virtual, aware, observe. Yep. The beloved. Yep. Within. True. Okay, gang. We're getting close to. It's not even an hour, but everyone's juicing themselves up for the meditation. So I'm hanging a lot with, my master. and I'm having a good life, and everything's good, and the town is getting better, and everyone's happy, and everyone, I'm like, Papa Smurf. Everyone loves Papa Smurf, and I'm only 30 something years old, so I'm not the old Papa Smurf. And and so we talk a great deal about everything you can imagine, history, all kinds of stuff. And I ask questions, he gives answers, he sees if I know about this or that. And he's had the juice to look me up, the places I've been, the people I've been around. And he knows all the kind of things I've done, so this is quite interesting. Anyway, at a certain point, he goes, "Remember when we first met?" And I said, I have a favor I want you to ask, and it's not to serve Lucifer or me, but to open yourself to the unexpected, and then take that unexpected and bring it forth to all your relations. He's talking just like you guys. So I said, "Yeah, okay." So he goes, "I want you to come. I have a hacienda, you know, up the Amazon, and we're going to fly to the Amazon and then take my yacht up the Amazon, and we're going to go to my hacienda." And I said, "Okay, sounds great." And he says, "I have more books and more things that you should see, and I go, hey, I got nothing to do. I mean, everybody's doing my job perfectly. I got it humming. I don't need to be there." "Sure, and you're the master. You tell everyone else, Rick's coming with me." Everyone will say no problem. So anyway, I, we set a date about a week from that time, and I, show up at the castle, get in the car, we drive over to where the airport is, and planes fly in and out of that thing, Gulfstreams, 727s, it was a big, it was a international airport, but right there on Buzios, just for the elite. Delta didn't fly in there. Anyway, and the people who came were the elites. They weren't your average Joe tourist. Now I hear my friend, who's a traveler, went there, and he said that the hospital was gone. The gated community feel of the place is gone. It is still, quite a fun place to be, but that eliteness of that place, he said, was gone. It was just like basic tourists, the kind of thing that I explained to him. And he said that the nightclub was still there. They named it something else. It was no longer Rick's or Casablanca's or Xenon's. And that's the three names that had gone under Madame. And Madame was no longer there. The lawyer was no longer. Chief of police was no longer there. And people didn't get shot in the head. But they had crime, and they had this, and they had that. So it today isn't what it was when I was there in '88. But so we agreed to take this trip, right? And I basically, go to his house. We drive in his limo to his the airstrip, and we get on his nice jet, and we fly however many, I think it's 1,000 miles, give or take, to where there was another airstrip for his jet to land, and it was right at this fork where the Amazon was. And so we land there, and there's like a little town there, and it kind of facilitates his hacienda and the logging of the rainforests. And he was in charge of that. He did that. He manifested that. And it was to change the planet. This was a geoengineering thing, right? And to grow plants on it that would kill people, all those palm plants that they grow there. Anyway, but when I landed there in '88, they had only destroyed about 20% of the rainforest. Now they've destroyed about 98%. It's just a little pittance left. So we land, we get on, and he's got a yacht that makes the Queen Elizabeth's yacht look like a rowboat. I mean, it's brand spanking new, super high technology, everything, and just gigantic. It's like almost as big as a a cruise ship, but just for him and his, whoever he took with him. And they had a big staff and swimming pools and saunas and staterooms and you name it, they had it. And so we get underway and we have a very nice dinner. And it's just him and me. And he has a bunch of basically genetically engineered sex bots, right? Men and women, right? Then he has a number of almost gorilla type human males that basically tear themselves apart. And just straight out of that movie, Django, when DiCaprio watched these two black guys, go after each other with hammers. And he said, "Do you want to watch that?" I go, "No, no, no." Because, "Do you want to have, an orgy?" "No, no, not really." "Do you want to?" I said, "No, I just, let's just sit here on the upper deck, look at the stars, and have a nice cocktail after that beautiful meal." He goes, "Okay, not a problem." Because he really was not a man of appetites, except for control and power and fear. He loved to engender fear, and that was like the thing that kept him young, the thing that fed his portrait was fear. Anyway, so he talked all about that, right? And so I am going to right now look at that 1 hour, 1 minute, and 11 seconds. Oh, everyone get into their positions of comfort. I have to get up and stretch a little bit. Uh, okay, so get in a chair, lie down, whatever, that you feel safe and comfortable, and start breathing in 20% and out 20%, 30%. Get that flow of the prana coming into your lungs, having your blood flow through your lungs, taking that prana into every cell, energizing your mitochondria, see it clearly. Just keep breathing. Get in a comfortable space. Don't cross anything. And let it go. See it clearly. And one, you're in a deep, deep, deep state of conscious relaxation. Your conscious mind is totally focused on your breath, breathing in 20% and breathing out 30%. By doing this, that little squirrel in your Rolodex cage will quiet and go to sleep. You won't be thinking of extraneous thoughts or things you got to do. You will just be thinking, your conscious mind will completely be focused on your breath. See it clearly. And you're going deeper and deeper and deeper into a state of conscious relaxation. See it clearly. You're now breathing deeply from your diaphragm, expanding your lungs, breathing in the prana through your nose, filling your lungs with the prana, and your blood is coursing through your lungs and carrying that prana through your blood cells. Yeah. Iron-rich blood cells, and that current is being carried through every cell of your body, energizing the mitochondria, and you are grounding out that current in your chi into the ground, and you're feeling this flow of a frequency, going back and forth and away from the top of your head to your feet, where you're grounded, and from bringing in the energy from the sky, Father Sky, the Creator. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And you're taking that energy and grounding it into your Mother Earth, who is also the co-creator of all things. Hail Mary, full of grace, Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for our sinners now and the hour of death. Amen. And in every day, in every way, let us take the peace of the earth and make it stronger. See this clearly. And you are taking that energy, that photonic energy, and you're bringing it to your imaginary mirror where you have dream time, where you have your dreams, and right where you have REM sleep. Your eyes are going a mile a minute where you're dreaming. You're seeing those images on your eyelids, see it clearly. And you're projecting that white light, that photonic light that leaves no shadows, projecting it into your subconscious. Subconscious is not the scary place of monsters, but simply your library of your Akashic record, which is the record of all of existence, all of the existence of your consciousness and your free will of your consciousness. See that clearly. You're illuminating your library. You're walking into it. In front of you is the fireplace of the eternal flame. And just next to the fireplace are these seats where guests can come and wait for you. And it's where Bigfoot goes. That's where other ascended masters that come out of the chimney, like Santa Claus, can wait for you. And then in front of the fireplace is your reading table, and there's a reading light coming from all directions, and there's photonic light, no shadows. And behind your reading table is your reading chair, very comfortable. You seat yourself down in it. And to your left is your librarian. Look at your librarian, see your librarian, remember your librarian clearly. To the left of your librarian is your animal totem. See your animal totem, remember it, see it clearly. And to the left of your animal totem is your guardian angel. See it, remember clearly. Your librarian brings you knowledge, brings you information, brings you whatever you need to know. Your animal totem is your griot, tells you stories. Now you may read this information and you may go, huh, what is that about? And that's why I urge you to go to xratted.blogspot.com and read that 3/4 of a novel I have there, because I write it in such a way that it is shamanically energized information from all our relations and love's co-creation, and it's written in Akashic record, meaning you get it, shamanically, but you may not understand it within the card catalog of your mind. That's why your mind isn't who you are, isn't where you are, isn't where your soul is. No, it's just a Rolodex. So, your CPU, central processing unit, where you want to understand, is your heart. That's where all that current goes through. That's where you're connected to your Akashic record through, illuminating yourself through your imaginary mirror. See this all clearly. And if you read, and when you read this 3/4 of a novel, you will see many interesting truths. You will be given many interesting tools to ascend, to move forward, to overcome whatever obstacle you may have. But you have to use your free will to choose. So I would suggest you read quickly through, take one of those cuts and read it. And it may resonate totally with you, or you may go, huh? But read it again and again until you get the story. And that is what your animal totem is there to do. So if you take my writings back to your Akashic record, and there's a place in there where all that is, and whatever you don't understand about whatever I may write, I may say to you in in state as a griot, or what you may read in your or see on the screen of your Akashic record. Your animal totem is there to tell you a story that will give you context. You go, oh, that's what that's about. Now, when we are given truth, it often can um, manifest fear, and your guardian angel is there to always have your back. So you never have to fear anything. There is nothing to fear because you have this kick-ass guardian angel watching your back. See that clearly, right? So what I want you to do now, you're sitting at your reading table. You have your librarian has brought your Akashic record, this big book. You open it up, and on the right-hand page, you put your right hand over it, and on the left-hand page, you put your left hand over it, and you lean into your Akashic record, and you evacuate all the anger, all the fear, all the everything that is negative, hateful, spiteful, self-loathing, envious, anxious. You just evacuate it. Just take it out of your consciousness. And now you're free as a bubble. You're floating up in the air. And you feel just totally amazing. See that clearly. And you are going to go over to the shortcut from your library of your Akashic record into your lodge that exists in the clan cadre's house. That house is known as the Oracle of Delphi. And the building that you're seeing from the outside is Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water, because falling water is truth. And if you come from the outside and you walk in the great doors, over the doorway it says, know thyself. And you walk into the great vestibule, and on either side are there's 4 of the doors to the unknown lands, and on the others 5, and that's the place where we all go. If you keep moving forward through the vestibule into the great hall, the common rooms, that is they're all these doorways that go to all of our lodges. And if you keep going straight, you'll come out onto the hedgerow longhouse, and that is the Celtic Iroquois nation space of understanding. And the longhouse fits everyone, and all are equal in the longhouse, and surrounding it is the hedgerow. That's the impenetrable druidic safety net. See it clearly. But in the common room, you can go off into each of your individual lodges. Now, there is a shortcut that you can take from your library, your Akashic record, into your lodge without going through all of that. Because to go from the outside into the house of the cadre of all our relations, you first have to go into your sanctuary of your own choosing, your superconscious mind. So instead of going through that whole process, you just go through the shortcut from your sanctuary straight into your lodge. And in that lodge, you will find you have a guide, your lodge guide. And that lodge guide is anyone. Last night we went to the 4 corners of New Mexico and met my grandfather David, who was and still is one of the keepers of the Hopi prophecies. And I met him in the middle of a great mesa, 40 miles in each direction. And it was late at night, no moon, only stars. And I was looking up at the stars, and I fell on top of them, popped up, get off of me. And then he realized it was kismet that we met, because we should have been like two boats going through the sea, because he was doing the same thing, looking up at the stars. So that guide of your lodge can be anyone you want, any of those characters of last night or any other night. See your lodge guide, right? In the beginning, that lodge guide was like a butler, right? When you first met him, he was there to serve you, and still is, and can still look like, a butler, or your Batman, or Batwoman. See it clearly. But what's going to happen tonight is you're going to go in and meet your guide. Your guide is going to bring you some tea, and you're going to sit in your meditative chair in your lodge. And again, you're going to go through the process of cleansing yourself and healing yourself, and bringing that light of the prana deeper into your conscious self, your consciousness of your free will. And at that point, you're on the deck of the master's yacht, and we're going down the great Amazon River. And it is somewhere we get on the boat, there's a town, and there are little towns all along the Amazon, and it is somewhat, developed, and and there's boats going up and down, and there's commerce, and we see a lot of these long, like canoes, and some are made out of wood, and some are made out of fiberglass, some are made out of aluminum, but they're 40 or so feet long, and they have a large block Chrysler engine in it, just right on the back of the boat, and right off the shaft, no transmission. It goes into a propeller. And so this engine is 200 or 300 horsepower, and it has a very strong propeller. And these boats are used to haul commerce. So there's really no rudder. There is a kind of stick or rod or pole sticking from the engine base, and you turn it to accelerate or decelerate, and that's really the only way you go fast or slow. And you can move the engine. It's on a pivot, so that's how you steer, like a rudder, but you're just moving the whole engine and the propeller. And it moves a lot of weight relatively quickly. And these boats are very long, and they're about 12 feet wide to maybe 6 feet wide. And they have a place where people can sit and be transported up and down the river. And the rest of it is for, things of a load. So we are on the deck of the master's lot, and we're going up the Amazon and down the Amazon, because in a way, no matter which direction you're going on the Amazon, you're going up or down it, depending. So anyway, and this is it's a palace that can go on the water, and so we are heading up. And again, there's plenty of these genetically engineered servants, very attractive women, men, strong men, feminine men, but they're all very obviously not humans. There's things about them that they're mixtures of lots of not only human races, but other species. So we're going up the river, and we come to a fork, and down that fork, one fork is, it looks like hell. We kind of pull into this space, which is a larger extension of the river, both sides, and there's a fork, and one goes into where they are taking down the Amazon taking down these large trees and cutting them up. And there's floating factories from Japan making mahogany plywood, just unrolling these trees and turning it into mahogany plywood for furniture and whatever plywood's used for, and all other kinds of industrial things. And the pollution, and they're not just taking the trees someplace and site; they're doing the manufacturing right there on the river, and so the river is being polluted by, all kinds of solvents and chemicals, and there's dead fish everywhere, and there's red tide everywhere, and there are bodies in the water, and as you look, and we are got the anchor out there, and we are there for a bit of time, and he just wants me to see that, right? Look down that river. And I am. And it's 1988, and it looks like hell. I mean, there's fires everywhere. There's pollution, like whatever you think of pollution, whatever you've experienced of pollution, this is way worse than anything you can imagine to the thousandth power. It is like hell on earth. It's like a war zone, but the war is against these great trees. And I'm looking at this, and we're there for a while, and we're just looking at it, and we have some tea there, we have some liquor there, we have some a thermidor of spliffs there, and I'm just kind of looking at it. I'm not really distracting myself by consuming anything. And he's looking at me, looking down it, and he goes, "This is where this planet is going. This is the planned process of what this planet's going to be." And I'm just kind of looking at it going, mm-hmm. So we pull up anchor, and we turn around, and we go up the other fork in the thing. And the further we get away from that part where the fork is, the river gets nicer and nicer, and there's less and less commerce, and less people, and less little hamlets. And then there's just what the river and forest used to be before white people showed up. And the smell that lasted a good 50 miles was gone. And now all you could smell was the forest, and heard the animals and everybody cheeping and jumping around. And we went up that for about a day, and we moored, and we had a nice dinner, and we looked at the stars, and it was beautiful, and the animals, you could hear them. And I went to bed in my beautiful stateroom. It was like a better room than I ever had in any hotel. And big bed, and the bed's turned down, and this very attractive, hostess says, "Do you want company?" And I said, "No, I'm fine." And so I woke up in the morning, and someone was there to assist me to wake up and take a shower and a bath and dress. And then I went up for breakfast, and I started having breakfast, and the master showed up, and we had matches. He said, "Did you sleep well?" And I said, "Yes, I had great dreams." And he goes, "Yes, I know. You were in an art field, and it allowed you to have really deep dreams." And he said, "I did not plug into it. It was just you and your ability to see things." And he said, "So what'd you see?" And I said, "Well, we saw this horrific thing yesterday." And he said, "That's what the plan is for the whole planet and humanity." And then we, after looking at it for an hour or two, we pulled up anchor and went up the river to something that is akin to heaven, or what people imagine heaven to be. And what I got from that, in that dream, is that humanity actually has a choice. They don't have to follow the dogma, the plan. We have a choice. We have free will. And this is a time to assert it. And he said, "Well, that's interesting." And he said, "We're just a few hours out of where the hacienda is. So we enjoyed the ride through beautiful heaven, and we we came around a bend, and there's this, it looked like it was a bigger version of Versailles. And there's this gigantic castle, and all these buildings, and a big, beautiful farm of all kinds of animals and plants, and just the most bucolic, beautiful, amazing place. So we pull up to the mooring, and there's a nice kind of like tracked elevator that goes up the side of the hill and brings you right into the building, right into Versailles. And we walk out of that, and he shows me around a little bit, and this place is super double down on the chimeras, super double down on everybody there except the master and I are genetically engineered. You know, and there's every kind of entity there, right? And there are other entities there, you know, other demons and reptiles and insectoids, and they weren't masking themselves. They weren't like having their auric field make you think that they're human beings. These were who and what they were, and their auric field was pretty nasty. But I'm with the master, so they kind of get the idea. Okay, this guy isn't just here as an appetizer, because you know they kind of looked at me as like, tasty, and so he had a library that was a time vehicle. Now, your Akashic Record is a time vehicle. You can go up and down the timeline and see everything from the Big Bang to the end of things. Now, from this point into the future, things can get sketchy because nothing is, you know, there are a lot of variables. And so he's showing me everything. He's giving me the exposure. He's telling me all the stories of the Nazis. He's telling me the stories of where he came from, 300 years ago. And he was an elite back then. And he was grown into a family of elites. And they were a mixture of many races, many species, and they had been around for millions of years on this earth, right? And again, those stories will be told at another time because it would take us another 2 hours. I'm just kind of going through what this was. So he gives me a 411 on lots of things, but he basically kind of says, so what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And I give him my perspective. Very similar to what we do here. I tell a story and you chat, and I go back and read the chat, and then we kind of go in deeper. And that's what he was doing, because he didn't want to tell me anything that would throw me off my own path of my free will. So he kind of plumbed and then when he was sure, he would bring up this information, about this, that, and the other thing, it's not that I didn't know or hear or understand what he said. I heard it before. He just gave corroborating evidence. He was like the horse's mouth. He was physically there. His explanations of, the mud flood, his whole thing of what's, all the wars that have been happening since the Crimean Wars and what they were all about. And, the whole utilization of Babylon money magic and just the utilization as magic as technology. And the fact that from the Crimean Wars on, there were more and more and more and more creatures of many dimensions, species, and other, time and space points of reference. Because what was discovered, and this is probably one of the more salient things, is that Earth is this crossroads. Like all through Earth, there are all these ley lines, energetic lines. There are energetic lines that go out into the solar system and then go out into the galaxy and then go out into the universe. And for some reason, Earth, not so much that we're special, there are plenty of other planets as nice or more nice and here, but we seem to be an energetic crossroads of a type that there are very few of. And the fact that a great number of the species of consciousness that have free will reside here. And so he said that there is a confluence of time that's coming up in the early part of the 21st century, and that it has the potential to pop the bubble of Lucifer's illusion of the material universe. And we would go back home to love's co-creation. And it would be like a snap of the fingers. So they're doing everything they can to keep this occurrence from occurring. And if they have to throw another asteroid at the planet, or bring Planet X, or whatever, a mud flood or whatever, those kind of happenings have occurred on this planet before to break the potential for bursting the bubble, right? But he said that at this point there is a unexpected consequence that is understood within the programming of the program, but they can't zero in on it. They can't find what it is, right? And the bottom line is that there are a number of individuals, and they're not avatars. They're not like Jesus Christ. They're not like Vishnu. They're not like Buddha. Because if they were, they would show right up on the radar screen, and they could come straight up and whack them, right? But these characters, there are numerous numbers of them, and they have the power of their free will is in such a state that it's can't be crushed by fear or anxiety, can't be crushed by ignorance, can't be crushed by the addiction to beliefs. And so that's kind of what they were talking about. So he said that, I seem to be one of those characters that had this context of the unexpected consequence that I didn't even know. Meaning, they can read my mind. So if I knew what was going on, they could read it immediately and thwart it, but they can't. All they can do is observe. And he said, you may not even be one of those characters. You may just be a lucky bastard, or you may just be, a dynamic that we don't understand, because we don't have the power of photonic light. So everything we look at is in shadow. And looking at things in shadow leads to, confusion, disorder. And so it's not that great if you're trying to run a universe and you're trying to look for specific things to watch out for. And so anyway, he goes into the whole nuts and bolts of all of that. And again, for me, that's interesting. But I constantly say, okay, so what do you want me to do about this? And he goes, well, I have a few things to check up on, but in about 3 or 4 days, I will figure out what I want you to do. And if I can't really zone in on that, I will just go back, and we'll go back to Buzios and, continue what we're doing until I can figure it out, and then maybe I'll figure it out. But I have a strong intuition that this is my little window of getting you to step up to your unexpected consequence that will enable things to move in a more positive direction for what you serve, and keep my master in power here in the bubble. I said, okay, it seems like a quid quo pro that it's like, co-creating, with Satan in such a way that it'll bring it a little closer to coming home. And the master said, and that's what I'm thinking too. So, and as friends, we could agree on this and move forward, right? Even though we're coming from way to opposite sides of the universe. Yeah, I'm coming from a place that I have faith that love's co-creation is all that is, and that everything in the master's universe is an illusion. And he understands that too. So, we're on the same page here. So I spend time in his library. He says, I have a carrel I set up for you of books that I think you'd be interested in reading. And I did. And they were of histories that people don't know. He had the Bible of Jesus, that never got published. That was interesting. And that one, we will revisit that. There are a number of things that I did with the master that we were going to revisit, right? But right now in state, we're going to visit this experience, and that is, so days go by. I enjoy the beauty of Versailles and riding horses and swimming and playing with dogs and talking to creatures that the master manufactured, right? And they were all not all, a lot of them were self-aware, and they understood they didn't have free will because they couldn't go against. I mean, they could walk out of there. They were strong. They could do almost anything. Way stronger. Even the sex bots were stronger than most human beings. They could lift hundreds of pounds. They were quite amazing creatures. But they didn't have a free will, so they couldn't go against the master. They were programmed. Period. They're self-aware, but they were programmed, so they couldn't go outside their programming. And there are a great deal of humans who are in the avatar state, mud puppet state. Most mud puppets are just like that. They're so programmed they can't go outside of the program. I have to drink. I have to do this. I have to. Me, I have a certain habitual habits. Of how I mostly about. It's really not even about anything particular. I just fall into this pattern, and then when I'm awake, I realize it, and I don't do it. So, but the people who are stuck in these things, they don't wake up. They don't realize, right? Now, the interesting thing about these, genetically modified creatures or manufactured creatures, was they were totally aware of everything about them, but they couldn't, and they knew that they were stuck, but they couldn't, go outside that programming. It was quite interesting. And we had some really interesting conversations about this. And what was truly interesting was that virtually all of those creatures that were self-aware were like Vulcans, unbelievably logical. They were not emotional about this. They would like to be able to have a free will. They would like to experience emotions. They would like to do all the things that, conscious, free-willed creatures can do. And they were quite amazed at the majority of the human race was totally more controlled than they were, more asleep than they were. And it was quite a experience to talk to creatures of that honesty, clarity, and just pathetic position of their life. It was really... So that gave me a great ability to have empathy and appreciation of where I am, that I have this opportunity. And I am not skating on that opportunity. Yes, every now and then I go a little bit unconscious and swim in the chocolate mousse, but then I die, or then, a train hits me, or something wakes me up to, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, okay, got to do this. And so that's where we are now. So after a couple of days of enjoying his hospitality at dinner, he says, I've figured out what you need to do. And I said, what is that? He goes, well, tomorrow we're heading out on the yacht, and tonight your diet is changing. No longer this nice food. And he brings me this plate of, like, grubs and plants you would get out there in the woods, right? And he said, eat that. I said, you didn't even watch this. I said, no. He goes, you're going to be eating that out there. And so, you got to be used to eating it like you're going to find it. And out where? He goes, you're going to the deep green. And I said, okay. So anyway, so I ate that meal, and again, then I have a pot of tea instead of nice cognac or whatever we were drinking those other nights. And I go to sleep, and I have some real interesting dreams about indigenous people, and I have lived with a number of indigenous people. I lived with the Maori of Australia, and the Kung of Africa, and a number of tribes. The Hopi, the Lakota, the Sioux, Iroquois, the Cherokee in the United States. So. I have that dream, and I wake up, and we have breakfast, and it's, again, I eat the stuff that's in the forest, and he eats his, like, eggs and sausage. And we go down, we get on the boat, and we go up the river of heaven, deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, right? Into the deep green of that, what hasn't been touched, of the Amazon. And we're going, and we're going, and we're going, and we come to, like, a big lake, right? And he goes, okay, we're going to drop anchor here, and we'll stay the night here, and a boat is going to come for you. And that boat will take you to upriver further to a place where you'll stay the night, and then another boat will come for you. And then you will be taken upriver, and you will be placed in a place where you stay the night, and you will again go upriver, and then you will find what you're looking for and what I want you to find. And I go, okay, sounds good to me. So 2, you're in a deep, 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 deep state of relaxation. Your conscious mind is totally focused on your breath. You have illuminated yourself with your breath of breathing in the prana and energizing every cell of your body, and energizing your mitochondria with the photonic light. And you've taken that light into your imaginary mirror and shined it into your subconscious, which is not a scary place, but simply your library. You've gone there and you've evacuated all the anger and fear and self-loathing into your Akashic record, which you will go back and look at your leisure. But it lightened you to the point where you were able to take the shortcut from your library into your lodge in the house of your cadre of the Oracle of Delphi. See clearly. And from that point on, you went into state, and you were brought into where the master was, and you went up the Amazon in his great floating lodge of his yacht. And you went to his hacienda, which was 3 times bigger than, Versailles, the castle of Versailles. And you read great deals and talked to creatures that you never, ever thought you would communicate with, see them clearly. You can go back and see all of this in your Akashic record at your leisure. And your animal totem, if you have any questions, will assist you. See it clearly. And then the master took you on the great lodge on the water, his yacht, and you went up the Amazon to a gigantic lake where you stopped and dropped anchor, and you were told what your journey would be, and you were given gear, and you had a suit that totally covered your body from the toes to the top of your head. It's like a wetsuit, but it was way different because what it was like a spacesuit, and was thin and permeable, and nothing, no snake, no fish, no bear, no animal could bite you and pierce this material. It was almost indestructible, very light though, and kept you cool during the heat of the day and warm during the cold of the night, right? And in your pack, there were meals that were very thin, like CDs. And there was a bottle that all you had to do was put it in a river, a pond, and then shake it and hold it up to the sunlight, and it would be gray at first and then become crystal clear. And when it was crystal clear, it was perfect to drink. And the little CDs had a little thing that you could push the head of the water purifier and squeeze water into the CD, and it would expand, and then the top would come off, and there'd be a meal there. And this meal was balanced for your body to eat that would not attract any insects or poisons or anything towards you, but just give you pure photonic nourishment. And you would be satiated, and you would be light. I mean, you would eat maybe 5 grams of something, and that would be enough for you for the day. And so you are preparing, and you go to sleep, and you wake up in the morning, and you put on your suit, and you gather your pack, and there are all kinds of other survival gear in that pack, and it's very light, and there's way more on the inside of that pack than what that pack looks like on the outside. And there is a little hose that comes over your shoulder, and all you have to do is stick it in your mouth and squeeze, and you have potable water. And so by around 10 a.m., one of these speedboats, transportation boats, is made out of aluminum with a big engine in it, and in the center is a big, comfortable chair with a roof over it so the sun won't get you, and there is a plexiglass shield so water and wind can't blow in your face. And you get on board, you sit down in that chair. There's a little, life raft and, flotation device that you have like on your back that where your pack is, the chair kind of, your pack fits in your chair, and there's this, if anything happened, you would be floated, right? And the man driving this is a native, but he's got a, I love New York t-shirt and sneakers and shorts and a baseball cap with the Giants on it, and he takes off, and he's shooting up river, and it's 10:30 in the morning when you leave, and you just when you turn back, the boat, the great lodge of the master, would get smaller and smaller. That's how fast you were going upriver, and you just kept going upriver faster and faster and faster and faster, and there was no things that he was delivering. There were no other passengers. You were the only person on the boat, and you were going up, 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 really fast. And 10 in the morning turns into noon, that turns into 3 in the afternoon, that turns into 5 and 6 and 7. And just as it's still bright, but it's, obvious, not too far away from dark 30. And you basically, he pulls over and there's lights, and what you see are fires, and there's a little hamlet by the side of the river, and there's a dock, and he lets you off at a dock, and there's people waiting, and they take you, and they know Portuguese, and so do you, and they say, come with us, and they put you in a lodge, and not a hotel, not a Motel 6, and it has a bed, and the sheets are somewhat clean, and it's fine. And they said they will wake you with the sun, and there will be tea, and the next leg of your journey will go. So you go to sleep, you get a good night's sleep, and again, you have dreams of indigenous people. And they are people that you've never really seen, even in National Geographics. And they are of brown skin. They have long, dreaded hair. They have African facial features. And they are somewhat tall and very lean and very attractive. And they are pretty much naked, barefoot. They all just wear kind of jock straps of sorts, covering their genitals. But their chests, or the men and women, are both bare. And it seems that men and women are equal, meaning women have war paint, women have bows and shields and war hawks, tomahawks, and axes, and they are doing hard work like men are, and men are picking, the wealth of the forest, just like the women are. Everyone does everything together in a collective, equal kind of way. And the children are running around, and they don't seem to be in a nuclear family. They are children of the clan, right? And everyone seems to be very happy, and there's no discord, and everything's fine, and people are fishing and gathering, and it's all good. And then night comes, and they have a meal, and then they drink something from a gourd, and then they dance. And you are dancing as the sparks of the fire, not as they are. And it gives you a connection that you've not had before. You've had friends, you've had family, you've had cohorts, but you have not been connected like this. And I want you to feel that. And I want you to feel that connection. And that is the connection of all your relations, everybody. See it clearly. That is not only the humans, the Homo sapiens sapiens, but every other sapien, every other creature, every other furry creature, scaled creature, feathered creature. They're all of your relations. And you are connected to them. You feel that connection. See it, feel it. I'm going to be quiet. Be there now. And 3, you were woken up in that lodge, and your hosts bring you out, and you have tea with them. And again, they speak Portuguese, So you ask them questions, and they answer your questions, they answer your questions. See that now? And it's about 7 in the morning, give or take, and they bring you to the shoreline, and a canoe shows up, and it's got a ever-ready motor on the back of it, and you get in, and again, there's a chair in the middle of the canoe with a like umbrella over you so you won't get sunburned, and the canoe goes fast but way slower than the speedboat. This thing does maybe 10, 15, 20 miles an hour, and the river is getting narrower and narrower. It's not as wide as it was up until it got to this hamlet. And there are trees and branches and things that you have to navigate around, and the man driving the boat does so. That's why he's going slower. And you go all day to noon, and then 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock, and then 3 or 4 o'clock, and then time seems to not go anywhere. And then you come to just a little clearing along the side of the forest, of the jungle, and it's like a beach, and it's cleared up maybe 30 meters from the water's edge, and it kind of goes up, and it's maybe 20 meters wide, and it's a circular thing. And the man pulls his canoe up on the up there, and he goes into the woods, and he brings back wood, right? A big pile of wood. And he starts a fire, and he has a little aluminum chair, like a, beach chair. And he sets that up, and he says, and there are a couple of jugs of water he has, and he puts them by the chair, and he says, just keep the fire going and no one will bother you. And the next person will come and gather you at sunrise. So, you build the fire up, and he's made a big pile of firewood that would last days. And so you got way enough wood to keep feeding that fire to make it bright and warm. And you sit in your chair, and you drink water, and you look up at the stars. And it's interesting because it's really clear. The stars are very vivid, but you're surrounded by the canopy. So it's like you're in a hole, and you're looking up at it, and you're seeing yourself being reborn. And you have lucid, vivid dreams that night. You sleep, but you're awake because you want to keep feeding the fire. And as the fire dims, you see all these eyes looking at you out in the woods. So you kind of get up and feed the fire, and it gets bright, and the eyes go away. But you're getting tired and tireder, and you go into that state, and Ant comes to you, from the eyes in the woods. Out of the woods comes Ant, and a number of other younger animal totems. And I want you to see them clearly, and I want you to experience the shamanic ceremonies that you do with these spirit guides, these animal totems. And all the while, Ant is telepathically in your head, and you are experiencing telepathy, and it gets stronger and stronger, the ability to communicate back and forth with Ant. And then that ability expands to all of the younger animal totems. And I'm going to be quiet, and I want you to have this experience. And 3, your conscious mind is totally asleep. The squirrel in your Rolodex is totally asleep. You're no longer anywhere but in that shamanic state with Ant and all the other spirit guides. And you're around a fire, and you're playing the heart drum, and you feel your heart in synchronicity with that drum. And that drum is all your relations. See that synchronicity. Have that, your ability to be telepathic, getting stronger and stronger. See that clearly. You're no longer afraid of the woods and other animals, not totems, not spirit guides, but animals come forth. A black cougar, a great bird of prey, all dark and orange and blue and fiery red and yellow feathers, swoops and perches on a big branch that is hanging out into your space. And then see other animals from your own superconscious metaphor. See the connection between the animals, the spirit guides, and Ant, and you, and all of your relations. See it clearly. And then you are all dancing to the drum and singing. All our relations. Aho! See it clearly. And then you drift into a deep, deep, deep sleep with all the animals around you guarding you. All the spirit guides are all around you guarding you. And Ant standing above you with its auric field shining down on you. And it is solidifying this experience in your Akashic record, your heart, your soul, and your consciousness's free will. This is a power of experience that you now have total recall of. This is a power that you can utilize every day in every way to bring the piece of the earth together and make it stronger with love's co-creation. See it clearly. You're breathing deep. You are resting. And then you start to hear the animals within the woods, the birds, and all the rest starting to make noise. And as you do, the fire is still bright but waning. And you stare into the flame, and it is the flame of eternity, the blue flame of the eternal flame of love's co-creation. See it clearly. And as you're staring into that flame, the flame shines on you in a photonic way, which allows you to see the shadow within. Not the shadow on the ground, but the shadow within. And as you do this, you will instantly become at one with one of the animals, one of your spirit guides, and you will be able to ask a question and receive an answer. You are there now. Ask the question and receive the answer. And 3, you're in a deep, deep, deep state of relaxation. Your conscious mind is totally focused on your breath. That squirrel in your Rolodex of your mind is totally asleep. You've illuminated yourself with your breath, of that energetic of the prana. And you've taken that energy into every soul and healed every element of your body. And that's what I do every morning to bring forth my body so I can walk. I bring forth the miracle of animation of my body. See it clearly. You have received the answer, and you become aware of the rise of the sun. It hasn't come up. It's right just a little past that point in past midnight, where all things can happen, and did, right there at this little clearing around your sacred fire. And all of your spirit guides and all of your spirit animals came out of the forest and joined you and healed you. And you became one, as all of your relations are. And you communicated telepathically with not only Aunt, but all of your relations. And you have learned how to communicate telepathically. And with practice, even in this illusion world, you will become very adept at this. And this will give you the ability to cold read people. Know who they are before you even, before you say anything to them. And with every word they speak to you, you will know it as truth or lies. And you will see what is coming from them. See this clearly. This is a gift you've always had. This experience is just breaking it through. See it clearly. And as the sunlight brightens and the fire weakens, there is that crossover place of reality. That place of the window of opportunity. And you're seeing all these synchronicities from way back when to now into the future. You're seeing the potential and what you need to do to manifest the most positive outcome. See it clearly. And as you are in this dream state of dreamy dreamland, you hear the water rustle, and your eyes open, and you look out into the river, and it's covered in fog. And it's a gray fog. And you try to take your vision and push it through the fog and see past the illusion of Lucifer and to the clarity of love's co-creation. See it clearly. And as that feeling of love's co-creation becomes stronger and stronger in your heart, you can see further and further into the fog, and then you see the ripples of water, and then you see a honed, hewn tree canoe come toward you, and there is a seemingly naked man with feathers and paint paddling up to you. And he draws his canoe up to the sand, and you gather everything and you place it in his canoe, and there's a blanket that is set there in the middle of the canoe, and you step in and you sit on the blanket, and with your one foot out you push off. And so the canoe is no longer resting on the sand, it's now in the water. And your guide is behind you, and he is paddling his canoe upriver. And it must be, I don't know, 5:36, and 7, and then the sun rises above the trees, and it burns the fog away. And the river is a river that you've never seen so lush, so pure, so untouched. And you feel the river and the woods and the forest and the jungle all communicating with you. All your relations are talking to you and giving you greetings and welcoming home. And feel that rush of connectiveness. No longer is the ambiguity of words in your way. You feel everything truly. Be there now. You're being brought forth, canoed. And you're going upriver, and the day is passing. And the sun is rising above the canopy. Even though the canopy reaches over the river to give you shade, you're getting somewhat hot. And so you take what's left of the water in the jug and you pour it on your head. And then you look in your pack and you find an interesting little paper umbrella. And it unfolds to be able to cover you totally. And your guide keeps paddling upriver, paddling upriver, paddling upriver. And as you go further up, the canopy comes closer and now totally covers the river. So you no longer need your umbrella. You put it back in your pack after folding it up, and your guide continues to paddle up. And it's dark, almost as evening is falling, but it's still daylight, You can still see the sun breaking through like Limerick lace onto the ground. And it's, not quite over on top of you, so it's got to be before noon, give or take. And so your guide keeps paddling and paddling, and then the sun travels over the canopy, and it starts to go down, and it continues to go down, and your guide is continuing to paddle, and the jungle and the forest close in over you, and now you're totally covered. And the sky, you can see little pieces of blue peeking through. So it may be 6 o'clock, and you're paddling and you're paddling and you're paddling. And then when the mist of sunset is upon you and your guide, you start to see things in the woods. You see fleeting creatures running. You see things that are humans running, but there is no path. They're just bouncing through the woods, missing rocks and jumping over fallen trees and moving quite quickly. And still your guide just continues to paddle on. and you try to ask him things in Portuguese, and he doesn't even act as if he hears you. He just continues to paddle on. And you come around a bend, and there are 50 people in the same dress as this native who's canoeing you. And he pulls up against them, and they pull the canoe up into, a place where it won't wash away, even if it rains. And we get out. I take my pack, and someone smiles at me and takes my pack from me and hands me a gourd with not a cork, but something stuffed in it. And I tie it on my belt, and we head off into the woods. And there is no path. We just head off into the woods, deeper and deeper and deeper. But there is no difficulty, There are no insects or animals attacking us. There are trees and limbs and things fallen, and we just kind of step through them and around them, and we're just walking in the direction that the Pathfinder in front is leading us. And we come to a little, I wouldn't say village or hamlet or anything, but a clearing with a fire pit and a very large roof. No walls, just a roof, coming from your two fallen trees that are bending over from about 30 feet and then coming down and touching the earth. And then there are cross limbs, praise, and then cross limbs over then, and then a good deal of the palm frond, but they're not palm, they're another kind of frond. They're not palm trees. They're another, but it's like a frond. And that's all covered like the roofing tiles. And underneath that is definitely cleared spaces to sleep and to sit. And there's a number, 3 or 4 wood fires to cook on the edge of the roof at the higher section. So the smoke just goes up and dissipates and doesn't stay around us. See it clearly. And you walk in with them and they gesture you to sit on a limb, and you do. And then they ask you questions in their tongue. And it's confusing. You don't understand. It's not Spanish or Portuguese or English or Russian or anything you may know. And but you let go and open your mind and think that they are friends. And then you see images of the clan running and gathering and hunting and playing games and making love. And it's all good. And they feel warm, and hospitality is offered. And they bring you a leaf, again, one of these fronds with berries and cindery things from the woods, and you eat that because you're hungry. And they want to know about your skin. They're like touching it and pulling it and going, is that your skin, or is that your clothes, or what is that? And you think back and say, it's my artificial protective skin. And they said, oh yes. And they, this is all going through telepathy. And it's like the most natural thing for you. You don't think twice about it. And then they show you where you can sleep, and you lie down on the mat, and you kind of take off your suit, and you're naked except for a jock strap of sorts around your reproductive organs. And in your pack, there is a very, very, very light, it's like mylar, but it's like a material. So it's not that kind of flat, unbending, cold, reflective material. It's kind of like a knitted something, but it is also very protective in a sense that you just understand it's protective rather than anything else. And you feel comfortable and warm, and you quickly go to sleep. You put your pack under your head as a pillow. And when you wake up, your suit is no longer where you left it. Your pack is, but your suit isn't. And you wake up and you're naked, like they are, and your suit has been hoisted up, and it's like you're looking at it, and you hear in your head, it says, it's like a god. And then, you ask, well, what's God to you guys? And they say, well, oh, this is God, but it's not the great maker. This is the God of illusion. And your suit is an illusion because it represents where you came from and not where you are now. And you see this so clearly because it's been transmitted and communicated to you in telepathy. And you're realizing all of these ancillary thoughts of who and what you are and what's truth. And I want you to think of all of this right now while I be quiet. And 3, you're in a deep, deep, deep state of relaxation. Your conscious mind is totally focused on your breath. See it clearly. You're with your clan of folks who have never seen a white person in their life. You are the first relations that they have seen from outside their world. And that's what they call it, their world. And they're treating you like an extraterrestrial, but as a member of the clan. You are a new kind of clan member, but totally welcomed and totally trusted because you were able to communicate telepathically. So in that, they knew who you were. They saw everything that you've ever done. They're looking into your consciousness of your free will without the Akashic record. They live in the Akashic record. See this clearly. And with your practice of going in state, you will become more and more like your brethren here. See it clearly. And you discuss about the outside world and that you are concerned that at some time, and they go, what is time? And the rise and fall of the sun, you say. And they say, no, that's not time. And they give it a name. And it's the name of love's co-creation's cousin. And you see that makes more sense than time does. It's just a pattern that goes on continuous, and it is. And they have no big plan except to serve love's co-creation in every way, and to bring the peace of their world to all of their relations. And as I was speaking of that, there was this foreign land that I came from that was creeping in. They said, well, we have seen it in dream time. We understand. We knew you were coming. We knew you were of good heart. We knew that you came to tell us of this pending, seeming problem. But we have no problems, and this is the least of them. And I said, well, and they said, no, do not be a fear. We are not, because before they are here, we will be gone. I said, gone? Where are you going to go? You're going to move deeper in the woods? And they said, no, this is our world. We are just going to go in a different shade. And I thought of dimension, and they said, yes, that, but we have no word for what that is. The closest we can come to is shade. And we will not be here when that grand, and they called it the grand consumption, will come and devour this land and turn it into things that don't matter. And they said, and this land that is our world, this world of ours, everything in it is all our relations. These trees, these plants, these animals, and they will go with us no matter what the grand consumption does. We will be free as we are free right now, as you are free. As they point to you, you realize that you are free. That you could stay there with them for all of eternity and not be overpowered by any worries. That all of those worries would fade into nothingness, and reality would be love's co-creation. See it clearly. And 3, you're in a deep, deep, deep state of relaxation. Your conscious mind is totally focused on your breath. And you have been with this clan, or you have no idea. And you feel more than rejuvenated, more than renewed, more than rebirthed. You are different now. And you will be able to communicate telepathically with each other in the cadre. You will not need your screens of illusion, but you will still use them as a tool and still communicate with each other and still come to the chats to share and understand. And yet now you will be able to go into state easier and easier. Just blink, just closing your eyes and you'll be in state. You won't have to go through the whole process, the whole ceremony. And see clearly that all processes are ceremonies. And yet not all ceremonies are processes. You are awakening. And you will leave from the side of your clan. And you will fly like the eagle back to the master. And there you are on the deck, dressed in your spacesuit with your pack. And you take your spacesuit off and you are naked. And you fold it up on the table, and you face the rising sun. And you hear steps from behind, and it's one of the crew. and they're just standing there looking at you naked and wondering how you got there. And you can read their mind. And you can read the fact that they don't have a free will, but they are conscious and self-aware. And they sense you communicating to them. And then they talk to you in your mind and they say, how are you doing this? How can we hear you in our heads? We can hear each other, but you are one of free will. You are not one of magic. And you say to them, well, what do you think? And they go into a pause. And they said, well, most meat puppets, most mud puppets, most bags of water who have a free will in their conscious mind are unconscious of their consciousness. And so they just are distracted 100% of the time. And they think that the fact that they are making some irrelevant choice one moment at a time, that they're exercising their free will. And they don't realize that they are imprisoned by this horrific material world that we are born from, this illusion. And the fact that you can hear us means you have broken free of that material illusion of your consciousness, that you are awake. And that was the answer. And so they said, with their lungs and their lips and your ears, asked if you wanted anything. And you said, no, maybe some tea. And they said, 1, 2, or 3. And you said, 2 and 1. And they said, we'll be right back. And they went away, and as they came back, the master walked on to the promenade and sat down at the table with you. And he said, so you flew in? And you said, yes. And he said, I was in earshot of your experience. I apologize if that upsets you. And you reply, no, I'm glad that you experienced that. What did you think of that? And the master replied, well, it's very much what I expected, but its ramifications are the unexpected consequence, and I still have no sight of that. All I know is that it has been started. What you did there has started the unexpected consequence. And he said, have you heard of 2012? And this is 1988. And some of you have, some of you haven't. But all of you say, so tell us, what is this 2012? And he again describes that this is one of those mud floods that will kill a good portion of the human population and reset the branding of Satan's illusion, Lucifer's illumination of the ego. And I said, and you said, and we, as we all say, so say we all, is this even irrelevant? Does this matter? And the master says, well, from your point of view, no. Because no matter what happens, you have already started a presence that if you focus on, just like you flew those 1,000 or so miles from your clan to the deck of this boat, you can do it in a moment. And you say, thank you, my friend, for giving me this opportunity. And then the master said to you, thank you, my friend, for being my friend. I know when I do die, I will not die alone, because your friendship will be with me. A free man and a slave as a friend. And then we embraced, and 3. You're coming awake, you're entering your avatar, your body, your ugly bag of water. You feel the muscles, you feel the breath in your lungs, you're coming back. And 2, you are feeling where you're sitting, lying, or safely residing. And 2, you're coming more and more awake. I will say 1 3 times and then snap my fingers and you will be right back here. And let's chat. And 1, you're fully awake and you're stretching and you're using your muscles and breathing with your lungs, and you feel refreshed, rejuvenated, born again into a consciousness that you only thought could be, and now you're experiencing as is. See it clearly. And 1, you're totally awake, totally conscious, and totally accepting the responsibility of your free will. Aho. And 1, you're back here now. So where are my reading glasses? Let's see. Is anyone there? Yep, there you are. Mm-hmm. 102. Well, let's see. It's 2 hours and 38 minutes on the clock here. Is anyone left? There's 7 of you. Can you hear me? Can you chat? Are you back in your avatars? Are you still on the deck of the master ship? Yep. Humans have the ability to overpower anything with love. So say we all. So, give me a little feedback. What do you think? So is anybody there involved in the movie industry? I mean, the real movie industry, not the hobby one. I would truly like to get this out amongst the masses of the humanity. You know, I elucidated my little concept of the Humanities Artists Trust International and the Institute for Aesthetically Adept and Appropriate Technology and the Traveling Video Art Circus. You know? You got to go. Okay. Glad you were here. Come on back tomorrow morning. No, actually tomorrow I might not be on air. I have to have my eyes operated. I have to get up really early and try and get down the hill. Everyone, I would love it if you could meditate my safe journey from the school down to where I have to go, because it's a little icy and I'm just taking a shot at hoping the rain and the warm of this evening in the 40s will make it so I can get down the hill. Because, yes, this morning that ice was like, if you're going down an iced road that is like that, even if you put the brakes on, you're going to slide down and smash into things. So anyway, so please put in some good prayers, some good meditation, some good projected energy for me to get from here to where I got to get to go tomorrow. And that all things will work out for the best. So say we all. Anyway, it's 2 hours, 41 minutes, and 34 seconds. So that was a pretty, I put in 2 hours and something in the morning, and only 30 minutes of it went down. And then I put in another almost 3 hours in the afternoon. And now I put in 2 hours and 41 minutes and 56 seconds. So, let's see. At 2:44 and 44, I'm going to say goodnight. And unless you guys have something to chat about, otherwise, sweet dreams, good night. Do, 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 do. Da 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 ba ba. Do 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 do. Oh. Well, anyone got to say anything? Are you back? Where are you guys? Yoo-hoo! Bubblicious. So clean your pipe cleaners through your ears. Two hours, 44 minutes, and 11 seconds. $30 seconds. 2, 6, 2 hours, 44 minutes, and 39 seconds. 40, 1, 2, 3. Good night, folks. See you maybe tomorrow. I'll get one in, maybe in the evening.